Once I asked myself, if people don't read books, can they learn from hip-hop? It sounds like the idea of some street-level university. But what if I told you that rap was always tied to the most basic questions of philosophy? Who am I? What is the world I live in? So, how is hip-hop connected to philosophy? And how did it go from social criticism and self-deification to nihilism and existentialism? Hi, this is the Lester Bureau YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and let's start. It started in the 1980s with the pioneers of the genre, when hip-hop wasn't trying to be philosophical at all. The genre focused on capturing reality and criticizing its sharp edges. Rap described reality without distance, and it was created by people living in the ghetto and facing social inequality. When the track The Message by Grandmaster Flash came out in 1982, it felt closer to something you could read in newspapers or see in TV documentaries. There is no attempt to step back and analyze the system from above. The song doesn't explain why things are the way they are. It shows what it feels like to live inside them.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
And this is where the connection to Karl Marx becomes clear, even if Grandmaster Flash didn't intend it. Marx wrote about how material conditions, class, labor, and environment shape human life before any individual decision is made. If you boil Das Kapital down to something that actually connects to early hip-hop, it's this. Your life isn't shaped mainly by your choices, but by the economic system you're born into. And that system quietly limits what's possible for you. Marx's core idea is that in capitalism, people don't control the conditions they live in. Work, housing, money, even time are structured in ways that benefit those who already have power. So inequality isn't accidental or temporary, it's built into the system itself. Later, with Public Enemy, the tone changes and observation becomes confrontation.
Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power.
In their music, the focus is no longer on living conditions, but on the narratives that support those conditions, the cultural symbols and the historical omissions. This shift echoes ideas associated with Michel Foucault. French philosopher Foucault argued that power is not only enforced through obvious structures like law of force, but through culture, language. It operates quietly, shaping what people see as natural, acceptable, or even admirable. Public Enemy's approach felt close to that. They questioned cultural icons, disrupt them, and reframe them. Once hip-hop made the system visible, the focus shifted. The question became how one is supposed to exist within that system on a daily basis. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, with groups like N.W.A, hip-hop moves away from observation and toward a kind of lived, practical philosophy. In Straight Outta Compton, the world appears unstable, immediate. Institutions, particularly law enforcement, are perceived as forces that intensify conflict in society. The result is an environment where formal rules lose their authority and informal codes begin to take their place: gangs, crime, and gun violence. This shift can be connected to the political philosophy of Thomas Hobbes. Writing in the 17th century, Hobbes described a hypothetical condition in which there is no overarching authority capable of guaranteeing order. In such a state, individuals are left to secure their own survival, leading to what he famously characterized as a war of all against all, where life becomes solitary, poor, and short. Hobbes' idea is simple. Without someone powerful in control, life turns into survival mode. But N.W.A describe a world where that authority doesn't feel like real protection.
Every time I pull an AK off the shelf, the security is maximum, and that's a law.
A similar kind of street-level philosophy appears in Who Took Me Under by Compton's Most Wanted. The track presents the environment as something that actively shapes identity. The line between choice and circumstance becomes blurred. It also connects to the idea associated with Karl Marx that environment shapes the way people think and act. When N.W.A describes being taken under by the hood, it suggests a loss of agency, a sense that the environment absorbs you.
And right then and there, it's no hope, cause a nigga can't escape the gangs and the dope. Damn.
While gangster rap is not describing a literal absence of government, it often presents a reality in which institutional protection is experienced as unreliable or even antagonistic. With Tupac, street philosophy becomes more explicit.
You don't wanna fuck with me. Got the police busting at me.
What stands out here is the relation to authority. The presence of the police doesn't create a sense of order or protection, it reinforces the idea that conflict is constant. The figure of the gangster becomes a response to that pressure, someone who constructs an identity based on resilience and self-reliance. This reflects a world in which external structures as power are not trusted to provide stability. In that kind of environment, the logic begins to resemble what Machiavelli describes. Writing about unstable political conditions, Machiavelli argued that when order is fragile, survival depends less on moral ideals and more on control. In that sense, the figure of the gangster becomes a kind of localized power, someone who maintains their position through perception and fear. What distinguishes this phase of hip-hop is its emphasis on adaptation. It constructs a set of working principles in a broken society, informal and often unstable. Concepts such as loyalty, respect, vigilance, and control are presented as values. They operate as strategies, ways of reducing risk and maintaining position within a harsh environment. And gangsters become the institution inside institutions, like an inner illegal government, living under their own rules and believing in their own power and street law. If the previous stage of hip-hop was about surviving the system, the next one is about rising above it, standing out and showing yourself. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, with artists like Jay-Z, the focus shifts again. In their tracks, the environment is no longer the center of the narrative. What matters now is the individual, an artist's success, autonomy, and his ability to redefine himself.
I got 99 problems, but a ain't one. I got the rap patrol on the...
The tone is no longer defensive, and problems become something external. This shift can be connected to the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche rejected the idea that individuals should simply adapt to existing conditions. He argued for the creation of one's own values, a form of self-definition that goes beyond inherited structures. In this sense, success becomes existential. It turns into proof that the individual has imposed their own will on the world. The idea of the Superman comes from Nietzsche, who rejected all dogmas and believed in self-creation. This is also where the connection to Guy Debord becomes relevant. Debord argues that in modern society, reality is increasingly replaced by representation. Social life turns into a kind of continuous performance, where images don't just reflect reality, they begin to define it. With 50 Cent, this logic becomes even more explicit.
Go shorty, it's your birthday. We gon' party like it's your birthday.
The emphasis in this line is on presence, visibility and control. The individual doesn't react to the environment, he dominates it. Wealth, status, and recognition function as visible markers of that control. At the same time, this perspective resonates with ideas associated with Ayn Rand. Rand's philosophy centers on radical individualism, the belief that success is the result of personal strength and should be embraced without apology. In her view, the individual does not owe anything to the collective beyond what he chooses to give. This logic appears clearly in the ethos of early 2000s rap. Achievement becomes moral justification. In the Club, the scene is carefully constructed: celebration, wealth, attention. It is a staged reality, one that reinforces a specific image of power and success. A similar idea appears in Mythologies by Roland Barthes. Barthes writes about how everyday cultural images become myths, simplified narratives that people accept as natural. In rap, luxury, dominance, and self-confidence start to function in that way. What defines this phase of hip-hop is its presentation. Identity becomes inseparable from image. Power is something you have and also something you show to people. By the 2010s, the confidence of the 2000s started to fragment. Success no longer guarantees prosperity or stability. It often exposes a kind of inner conflict, a distance between the image and the person behind it. With Earl Sweatshirt, the focus turns inward in a very direct, almost existential way.
My day's numbered, I'm focused heavy on making the most of them. I feel like I'm the only one.
The self is presented as something temporary, constantly in the process of defining itself. This perspective closely reflects the philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre argued that human existence is fundamentally open-ended. There is no fixed identity or predetermined essence. Instead, each person is responsible for creating meaning through their action, fully aware that time is limited and outcomes are uncertain. In that sense, Earl's line captures a very Sartrean idea. Meaning is not given, and the only option is to confront that reality directly and act within it. With Bladee, this instability takes on a different tone, more distant, more abstract.
Talk to me nice, I don't wanna talk if you're not gonna talk to me nice.
If American rap is often built around Nietzschean ideas of self-assertion, power, and the deification of the artist, European hip-hop tends to lean more toward romanticism, a tradition that historically shaped the cultural context from which Nietzsche's idea of the Superman itself emerged. Bladee's work can be understood within that romantic framework. These are songs about distance, alienation, and emotional ambiguity. The figure that appears in his music is often that of a misunderstood individual, someone detached from others, uncomfortable with the social world, yet paradoxically embraced by an audience that finds meaning in that detachment. The artist appears distant, but at the same time becomes a central figure for listeners. This also connects to the philosophy of Albert Camus. Camus described the experience of the absurd, a condition in which the world no longer provides clear meaning, yet the individual continues to exist within it. In this context, the emotional tone of modern rap, the detachment, the repetition, the sense of drifting, can be understood as a response to that condition. In tracks by N.W.A, the introspection of modern rap takes on a more grounded and collective dimension.
Niggas in the jam, locked down, we screaming freedom. Freedom ain't free until we all win.
Unlike the earlier focus on individual success or internal struggle, this line shifts the perspective outward. Freedom is understood as something shared. This introduces a quieter, more reflective form of philosophy, where meaning is found in connection and responsibility. It resembles the ethics of Emmanuel Levinas, who argued that our primary responsibility is not to ourselves, but to others. It also connects to the political philosophy of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, particularly the idea that freedom is not purely individual, but collective. So, yeah, you could read Marx, Nietzsche, or Sartre, or you could listen to your favorite hip-hop artists. We started with survival, moved to power, and ended up questioning everything anyway. Turns out, hip-hop was always philosophical, so if people don't read books, maybe they've been studying this whole time. Thanks for watching, feel free to follow me on Instagram and TikTok, let's stay in touch, see you!